So welcome to the first video on this channel. I just wanted to take you guys through what my garden looks like here in Zone 5B in Southern Ontario, Canada. It is December 22nd, so today's the second day of winter. I think we've had some snowfalls and some pretty cold temperatures. So I just wanted to track the progress of the garden and how it changes through the seasons. So if we start down here, you can see these are sempervivums, or hens and chicks. They close up in the winter time and the colors become more vibrant, but because they close up, you can see all the dead leaves are exposed. So these are all leaves from like a couple years ago. That's what they look like. But yeah, it grows these little babies around the edge, so eventually this one will grow into a bloom and then this plant will die, but all the other babies surrounding it will continue to live. That's what the other one looks like. Right here is a daylily that's completely died back. There's like you can see a little bit of the remnants of that plant. Then right here is a catmint that bloomed for a super long time, attracted a ton of pollinators. Yeah, it's mostly died back, but you can see this is what the foliage would look like. So it's kind of blue-green, silvery, and has these purple flowers. Right next to it is some phlox that doesn't look really great. This plant doesn't have basal growth, I don't think, so there's nothing really to see down there. Here is one of the many salvia, the annual salvia plants that I grew from seed this year. They did really well and were blooming almost into November, which is pretty amazing. Apparently they're hardy to zone 7, so they still have some growth left. Maybe if we have a warm winter, they'll overwinter and then come back in the spring. But if they don't, I'll just grow them from seed again. Then right here is a campanula. So it's a bellflower. It blooms earlier in the summer, so like late spring, early summer. Had a lot of blue purple flowers on it and attracted a lot of bees. And then right here, as well as over here, is a ground covered dragon's blood sedum. It's just a ground cover. It bloomed a little bit, super drought tolerant. I planted this one from cuttings. I may flash pictures on the screen just so you guys get a better idea of what the plants look like when they're in bloom, because there's not very much to look at right now. So next, right here is this quick fire hydrangea that we planted. It's from Proven Winners. It has nice winter interest, so the flowers just dry out. When it was in bloom, they started out pink and then gradually faded to like a bright magenta color, but right now they're just like tan, but they look nice, especially when they're covered in snow. Right here is an Euphophia, or red hot poker. These don't always survive the winter in our climate, but they have really cool flowers. I'll see if I can put up a picture of what they look like when they're in bloom. Then there's some more. I actually divided that bellflower that I showed earlier. So here's another one of the pieces of it, and this is a zinnia seed head right here. Then right here is a native plant. This is Penstemon hirsutus, or hairy penstemon. It bloomed a really long time, and the honeybees really liked it. It has these white flower heads, and then this is what the seed heads look like. They look kind of cool. They're these capsules filled with a lot of tiny seeds, so I just left them up. Maybe it'll spread around. But it is nice how the foliage is evergreen and kind of purpley, so it's something to look at in the garden over the winter. Here's some more of those salvia plants. Here's a perennial salvia, so one that should survive the winter, that I divided. So that's kind of what the foliage will look like, with pink flowers. Right over here is a black-eyed Susan plant. That's the only wimpy seed head it has left because I deadheaded it. It's supposed to be a good winter interest plant, but I think because I deadheaded it so much, it didn't really hold well, so I think I'm gonna deadhead the plants less next summer, just so that there's seed heads left to look at in the fall. But you can see that's what the basil foliage looks like, so it's evergreen kind of too. Then right here is a bearded iris. It has purple flowers. It actually bloomed for the first time for me this year. I just cut it back. And then right here, this clump of sticks is a purple coneflower plant. It got huge, like almost this tall, bloomed a long time, was a pollinator magnet. It actually attracted some monarch, a bunch of different butterflies and bees. I'll see, maybe I can post some pictures on the screen of what it looked like. And then right here, which looks really sad, is a gerbera daisy, which is an annual, so it's going to die back for the winter. There's some lilies in here, and here's another sedum that the rabbits have kind of been eating. This one has like bluish green leaves. Then all throughout here is just Stella d'Oro daylilies, the same kind of daylily as the one over there. And then in here is my little experimental shade garden, I guess you could say. Because of this U right here, it gets a little bit more shade in the summer. So all under here is a bunch of woodland perennials. So there's a hosta right in there, and there is some Solomon seal and a wild geranium. It doesn't look like much now, just a nub, but that's what it looks like. There's also wild ginger in here. There's a bunch of stuff in there. You can't really see anything right now. Nothing really holds up for the winter. So like here's a columbine plant. That's where the new growth will emerge in the spring. And then right here's a heuchera. I mean, it looks okay. The rabbits have been eating it, which is why it doesn't look so hot, but yeah. Right here is a gaillardia plant, which looks less than stellar. You can see this is a leftover flower, just to get an idea of what it looks like. I'll put up a picture on the screen, but I'm definitely gonna cut this one back in the spring. I maybe should have even cut it back in the fall. Then right here is another one of those salvia plants, so you can see the new growth at the base. There's also another one right here. So just to get an idea, that's what the growth looks like. Right here is a sedum plant. It didn't really hold up that well. They're supposed to be good for winter interest, but this one just doesn't look that great. Then right here is the remnants of my giant swamp milkweed plant. There was actually monarch caterpillars on it. It did really well, attracted a ton of pollinators, made a huge amount of seed. So I'm excited to spread the seeds around the garden and plant more. Right here is an endless summer hydrangea. These flowers don't hold up as well as the other hydrangea flowers like the Annabelle or the Limelight. But it still has a bit of winter interest, and you can see the buds, the red buds on it. And then if we swing around, in here is a heuchera, another one. This one just has green leaves and red flowers. And then here, if you want to take a closer look at the sedum, that is what the new growth that will come up in the spring looks like. I'll see if I can put up a picture on the screen of what it looked like when it was in bloom. And then right over here is one of my favorite plants, my lavender plant. It smells great when it was in bloom. It was covered in these purple flowers. It bloomed twice, so once in early summer and then again in the fall. And it's kind of it's really protected in this spot, so it's actually held up pretty well despite the cold weather we've had. But yeah, it's done really well for me. I really like this plant. And then lastly, the last annual surviving in the garden is this cabbage plant. Well, it's not an actual cabbage plant, but that's what it's called. It's not going to survive the winter in this pot, but it's something nice and green to look at, especially when you look at all the other stuff in the garden. That's just the pile of iris leaves that I just cut back. But yeah, just a final overview, and then I'll show you guys what it looks like in the back. So now we're in the backyard. There isn't much to see here. just a couple of spots where I've been experimenting with different plants. So in this corner, which gets kind of wet and is pretty shady, I just planted some ajuga, or bugleweed, I think it's called. This variety is Burgundy Glow. It looks really nice and it's evergreen, but it spreads super fast, so it grows pretty much like a weed. I think there's also a hosta here and maybe some geraniums, but the rabbits have gone after that. And then here's just another clump of ajuga. So then if we move over here, there's just some boxwoods and arborvitaes. This spot, when it was in bloom, it looked nice, so maybe I'll put a picture on the screen, but it looks pretty rough right now. So if we start on this side, we have a catmint that I propagated from the one in the front. So I just took some cuttings and put them in soil, and then this plant has exploded with growth. So this is what the foliage of the catmint looks like, and it gets these nice purple flowers on it. And then if you move to the center of the plant, you can see that's where the new growth will emerge in the spring. Then right here, here's another one of those salvia plants. This one was huge. It grew super fast and bloomed a really long time. I have some good pictures of this one blooming on November 1st, actually, after we had a frost. So then if we move in closer, you can see right there is a daylily that bloomed red, but it looks pretty rough right now. And then next to it is a gray-headed coneflower, which is a native plant in the aster family. It's similar to black-eyed Susan, but it looks a little different. Then right here is another heuchera. I think this variety, yeah, there it is. I think this variety is Palace Purple. It held up its leaves pretty well. I think it's evergreen. Then right here is another geranium. I don't know what variety this is, but the rabbits really like to eat this one. But the leaves look nice for November. I mean December. It's December 22nd, so it's pretty much winter. And you can see even though they're floppy, they look pretty good. Then right here is another heuchera. I don't know what variety this one is, but I really like the way the leaves look. Despite the fact that it's winter, it looks pretty good still. And then here is a perennial salvia, another division from the one in the front. And then if you look in there, you can see that's the basal growth from this larger annual salvia. And then on the other side, there's this purple coneflower that was a volunteer from seed from the one in the front. It just randomly sprouted. And then beside it, right there, is a lupin plant. I have no idea if that's going to live or die during the winter. I grew it from seed. It was the only one that lived, but we'll see how it does. And then move over here. This corner looks really sad right now. It looked better when everything was in bloom, but still, it doesn't look that great. So if we start here, this is a stalk of a sunflower that was really floppy, but it was nice. It was cheery, added some color in this spot. Then right here is another one of those ajuga plants. Then in the back is a monarda, or wild bergamot, that I propagated from cuttings. So hopefully that blooms next year. And then right here is a hydrangea, just one of the regular florist hydrangeas. And then right here is one of the from one of the sedums in the front, just a regular autumn joy variety that I propagated from a cutting. So if I go down, maybe you'll be able to see that is the new growth right there. Then here's another sedum. This one is just a variegated version of the autumn joy one, so it has white edged leaves. It doesn't grow as fast or as big. Then here is another catmint plant that I propagated. Definitely gonna cut this one back in the spring. And then finally, this is kind of interesting. So this is a sensation lilac plant. So it is like the regular lilac, except the flowers are edged with white, so it looks a little different from just the standard lilac. I removed it from a larger plant, so it was a sucker growing from the base. And I don't know what, like how many years it's gonna be before it blooms, but it looks pretty good. The buds are still intact, so hopefully the rabbits don't go after it during the winter when they're hungry. And then that's one of the leaves right there. So that wraps up the garden tour of the winter. I plan to do a big native bed in that corner. Just for reference, that's where the other bed was. But I plan to do a bunch of native plants in that corner because it's kind of sloped. So the grass has trouble growing there, but I'm sure the natives might do better. But that wraps up the video.